Right, Nick, you have been looking at the stats on how these two sides compare. Arsenal might just be able to try and cause a few problems for City. First of all, let's just see, how do these two teams compare, I guess, in an attacking sense?
Yes, well, we're going to see a series of graphics here which give us loads of information. So the first thing you'll notice here is Man City's incredible numbers, really, in an attacking sense this season. So you see they rank top in the Premier League in all of these categories. So 11 goals scored, that's 3 more than any other Premier League side this season. They've generated the most expected goals, they've had the most shots on target, the most chances created, the most final third passes as well. That, by the way, is more than 200 passes more than any other side for final third passes, which gives you an idea of just how dominant they've been. Now, we look over at Arsenal's numbers and we see they've scored 6 goals, so they're 5th for goals scored. They're 6th as well for shots on target, but they're a lot lower down in some of those other categories, aren't they? With expected goals, they're 14th, they're 12th for chances and final third passes as well. I think we can explain that partly by their games this season. They've played Spurs away, they've played Villa away, they had to play with 10 men, of course, against Brighton. So I would expect those numbers to increase, but of course no Martin Odegaard at Man City this weekend. So yeah, that will be an area they need to improve.
OK, let's flip it, let's go defence then. Obviously City come out on top here, but Arsenal, you would think, would be slightly faring better here. Actually, how do the stats compare?
Well, Arsenal have conceded the fewest goals.
Yeah.
Only 1 goal conceded in the Premier League in their 4 games this season, as we see. Man City, by contrast, have conceded 3. But then we look at these other categories, and we do see that Man City do actually come out on top in these categories. So it's expected goals conceded, shots on target conceded, shots conceded inside the box, individual errors as well. They're slightly higher than Arsenal. Goalkeeper saves. They're slightly lower than Arsenal, interestingly. But then Arsenal, yeah, their numbers are not as good in terms of their underlying numbers. So interestingly, they've conceded 4.22 expected goals and yet only conceded 1 goal. That comes down to poor finishing from their opponents and also important goalkeeping from David Raya, who's made some big saves.
He has. Let's focus on Raya. I mean, the 1 goal conceded, it could have been worse, couldn't it, had it not have been for Raya?
Yeah.
Let's have a look at this then.
Yeah, so he's made some very important saves. And here we have the top performing goalkeepers from left to right this season in terms of expected goals prevented. So this is in comparison between the goals they have conceded and the XG they've conceded, which gives you an idea of the goals they kind of are expected to have conceded. Mm-hmm. So here we have Nick Pope is the only goalkeeper who has a higher total of expected goals prevented than David Raya. David Raya's total is 3.22 there, so really, really important from him. I mean, you think about the Ollie Watkins save he made in that game against Aston Villa in particular, but lots of important saves, and he has played a really important role in them only conceding 1 goal so far this season, no doubt.
So Arsenal, you know, might need Raya to be on form again. Will they take encouragement, though? However, from last season, of course, it was goalless, wasn't it? However, and I guess both performances against City as well. Yeah,
of course, goalless at the Etihad Stadium, and Arsenal, of course, won for the first time in the Premier League against Man City since 2015 in the other game at the Emirates Stadium. And here we have Man City's lowest expected goal totals. This is since Pep Guardiola took charge. So this factors 308 Premier League games, and we see that the game against Arsenal at the Emirates Stadium was their 3rd lowest ever total for expected goals. So that does give you an idea of how successful Arsenal were in terms of limiting their chances. Again, this is going from left to right. So yeah, Arsenal, the 3rd lowest total of expected goals they've ever been able to generate. And we've got another graphic here which really hammers home the point in terms of how well Arsenal defended in those 2 games against Man City. So this scatter graph shows us a lot, really. I mean, look away now if you're a Manchester United fan, because you see the number of expected goals and shots they gave up in their 2 games compared to Arsenal down here in the corner here. So Arsenal only allowed 17 shots from Man City in the 2 games. They gave up hardly any expected goals as well. So this is an interesting graphic here. It shows us the teams who are most successful defensively and the teams who maybe struggled against Man City, and Arsenal very much at the end of the scale where they would like to be. Yeah, it's a very interesting graphic there. So here we see it slightly blown up for you there, and we see some of the teams. Man City were able to generate more chances against West Ham and Luton. They're sort of having around 50 shots in those two games against those two sides. Man United, we've already talked about, a lot of shots and a lot of expected goals generated as well. And Arsenal down there in the bottom left, really, really effective defensive performances with William Saliba and Gabriel, of course, at the heart of it, with those two centre-backs so important for Arsenal season. And this is another interesting graphic here, which shows us Erling Haaland's expected goals by game last season. So here on this side here, we have their expected goals. It goes up to 2 and up towards 3. You see the games in which he was most effective in terms of creating expected goals. Against Arsenal, both games, he was right down at the bottom there. So in the first game, he didn't have a single shot, so he created no expected goals. That was the only game all season in which he failed to have a shot. And then in the other game, he did have 4 shots in that game, but they were only worth 0.31 expected goals, and none of them were on target. So yes, Arsenal have defended Erling Haaland very well in the past. Can they do it again?
I mean, Arsenal, they're going to try and make it difficult for Haaland this time around, haven't they? How do we feel that they're going to try and do that?
Well, I think they'll put a lot of bodies behind the ball and sit quite deep, trying to frustrate Man City. And we have seen them do that quite a lot this season, as we can see with this graphic here, which gives us the average number of defenders a team have behind the ball when they are defending. So Arsenal right at the top there on 5.8 defenders behind the ball on average during the opposition's attacks. And we see Man City down at the other end of the scale. They've only had just over 5 defenders behind the ball during opposition attacks. So Arsenal have, of course, Gary Neville called the Spurs games the perfect preparation for Man City, and you can see why they have been in these kind of low blocks, defending for their lives really against Spurs and in certain parts of the game against Brighton and against Aston Villa as well. So I think they will be looking to do this again to frustrate Man City and put a lot of bodies behind the ball.
Yeah, so I mean, we've looked at how Arsenal try and stop City. How will they try to hurt them at the other end of the pitch as well?
Well, that'll be interesting, won't it? Of course, there is some pressure on them to actually get 3 points and not just prevent Man City from scoring, but score themselves. So we have seen how they've slightly changed their approach in games against Man City. There's been a lot more direct passing. So this shows you long passes by opponent last season. So 78 long passes against Man City we see there, which was a higher total than against any of their other opponents last season. So they do like to go direct to Kai Havertz. He can bring others into play. You bypass Man City's press by doing that. So I think we will see them trying to do that again. And then there are other elements, aren't there? They're very effective in counter-attacks, in set pieces. We've got a couple of good graphics here to show how effective they are. So here we are, shot conversion from shots from counter-attacks. So this is since the start of last season. Arsenal have been the most effective at converting their counter-attacking shots into goals. So this is something they will look to put to good use again against Man City. 19% of their counter-attacking shots have led to goals. And then the other big factor, which we saw again against Spurs, is that set-piece threat. I mean, they are just formidable from set pieces, aren't they? Score so many goals from these situations. And as you see, since the start of last season, Arsenal have converted 20.8% of their set-piece shots, which is, again, the highest total in the Premier League. So I think counter-attacks, shots, direct passes, I think those will be the ways in which they try and hurt Man City and maybe get 3 points in this game, which they haven't done, of course, at the Etihad Stadium since 2015.
Which will help on the way to potentially trying to whip the title off Manchester City. As far as a sort of title-deciding game goes, what does it mean for their chances if they get a positive result, if they go and get 3 points?
Yeah, I mean, they are big ifs, aren't they? It's such a tough game for them. But no, I think it would be huge. And I think what's interesting this season is that Arsenal do have slightly more experience in their team. They have the experience of the last 2 seasons. And now they're going for a third time for the title with a little bit more experience. So this graphic here shows us the average age of Premier League title-winning teams. This is in the entire Premier League era. So it's interesting, isn't it? You see the kind of dominance of Manchester United and then the dominance of Man City more recently. But what this also shows us is that Arsenal, in the last 2 seasons, we see these are their average ages in the last 2 seasons, have been, they would have been the youngest teams to win the Premier League. It would have been unprecedented for them to win it with such a young team. This season, they are a little bit older, so their average age has crept up over 26. And could that experience help? That's what they'll be hoping this season. We see some interesting insights from this graphic as well. You see Chelsea under Jose Mourinho, they won the title with the youngest team, and then Chelsea also, they won the title with the oldest team. That was under Carlo Ancelotti in 2010. So yeah, some interesting insights there. And Arsenal now creeping up towards that kind of area in terms of age where you do expect more in terms of potential title wins. So yeah, they'll be hoping that experience can help them in this game and beyond.
I'm going to put you on the spot. What do you think it's going to be? Give us a prediction.
I do fancy Arsenal's chances in this game. I mean, it's such a difficult one, isn't it? Man City have been fantastic this season, but Arsenal have shown their capacity to defend against them, to frustrate them, and I do think they have ways of hurting them as well. So I'd probably say maybe a low-scoring draw, maybe a narrow Arsenal win, but we'll see. It'll be fascinating.
Remembering Sir Howard Bernstein on Sunday, September 22nd, Manchester City's fixture against Arsenal will be dedicated to the memory of our honorary president, Sir Howard Bernstein. Sir Howard devoted his life to public service, working for Manchester City Council for over 40 years, rising to the position of chief executive in a role that he held for nearly 20 years. During this tenure, the city of Manchester enjoyed an incredible resurgence both economically and culturally following the decline of former manufacturing industries. One of his greatest achievements as chief executive was bringing the enormously successful Commonwealth Games to Manchester in 2002, using sports-led regeneration to breathe new life into Manchester, which in doing so, paved the way for Manchester City's move to the then City of Manchester Stadium, now known as the Etihad Stadium, from Main Road. Before kickoff, a dedication to Sir Howard's life will be read, followed by a minute's applause, providing our players and fans with an opportunity to pay their respects to a lifelong Manchester City fan who dedicated his life to the City of Manchester. Our players and manager, Pep Guardiola, will also wear black armbands for the duration of the match. Guardiola, happy with performance against top-class team Pep Guardiola, says he was more than happy with his players' performance in the 0-0 draw with Inter. The Italians caused problems with their defensive formation and attacked in numbers in what proved to be a tricky opening Champions League test. We faced a really difficult team, the champions from Italy, said Guardiola. They are physical and they have strength in all departments. They build up from Sommer and Battoni, playing on the transition. I am really satisfied for the game we played. They are masters of defending deep. They help each other unbelievably, so you cannot expect to create a lot of chances. We created some chances. We played much better than 2 years ago in the final of the Champions League. I like everything from my team today. We would prefer to win, but still 7 games, see what happens. Phil Foden and Ilkay Gundogan were introduced at halftime for Kevin De Bruyne and Savinho, and Pep says it wasn't due to injury as Head made his mind up to make a change regardless of the knock KDB sustained towards the end of the first half. The reason why was we played team with 3-5-2, he said. Every time the ball is on one side, 5 players go there. We have to turn the ball quick, so we need players in smaller spaces, and Rico, Phil and Gundo are the best we have in those pockets. Phil turned and shot, and 2 crosses that Gundo was there. Other players don't have those qualities. The way they defend, I said after 35 minutes I want to make this change. After what happened with Kevin, and the doctors said he was not ready to play. But I wanted to make the change anyway. I don't know how Kevin is. I didn't speak with doctors yet. I will have more info tomorrow. I have the weapons, and sometimes we need something different. We need it against this structure. Lautaro goes with Rodri and doesn't allow you to see spaces. I needed players with specifics, and that's the only reason I made the halftime subs. There is a long way to go. For many years I don't talk about trophies at all. In the Champions League, the emotions are completely different. We have advantage to play at home, but I admire teams who defend well. We defend really well also. We concede clear chances on the transition, but not much more than that. I know how good they are. They are top-class team, and we behave really well. We prefer to win, but I don't have regrets. I like everything we have done today.